we are seeing today is a very healthy adoption of 14.5 onwards, which really means ATT enforced supply. So just as a reminder, ATT was introduced by Apple through iOS 14, but Apple decided to enforce ATT only from 14.5 onwards. Now, what this means is that with the adoption of 14.5, the user has either to opt in or it will be deemed by the platform to be an opted out user, even if the prompt hasn't been printed out to him yet. So taking a step back and looking at the InMobi exchange, for instance, until 2 weeks ago, the penetration was fairly timid, I would say. But now, after the introduction of 14.6 last week, Apple decided to push the release at full throttle. And in fact, as of yesterday, or actually 2 days ago, in our exchange, we have started to see the number of requests from ATT overcome the number of requests of 14.4 and below. So this is a very important change because the apocalypse that everybody has been calling, is actually here. Now, as far as the SKR network penetration is concerned, we are very happy to share that right now InMobi is floating around 90% adoption, which again in terms of request is very big, and we do see most of the DSPs, and I would say all the performance DSPs having already solved their issues with SKR network. Now, of course, here and there we notice that sometimes they would see a discrepancy or there could be still a problem, but this is part of the migration. These kind of breaking changes are never really easy to take from anybody. But I'm fairly comfortable as far as the opt-in rate is concerned. We are seeing only in terms of opt-in, so only when the prompt is actually shown to the user, roughly around 25 to 27%, which is again very good. Now, holistically, if you look at the opt-in rate, it would be more, on the 20%-ish. Reason being that multiple publishers haven't shown yet the prompt because they are trying to get inspired by other publishers on the best technique to print out the prompt and optimize the potential opt-in. Casey, do we want to take the demand side?
Yeah, absolutely. So 4 different, let's say, stakeholders, right? Number 1 being the users. Number 2 being the SDKs and exchanges that are very close to the users. Number 3 being the advertisers, basically, who are trying to reach those users. And number 4, just the DSP ecosystem, right? Platforms like InMobi DSP, basically. If I look at the user side of it, very, very simple. I think the users were very well educated. Apple has done a really good job. They're running TV advertising, they're running digital advertising, educating the users on the importance of privacy, the importance of opting in or out, and why the entire change that has come with iOS 14 has mattered to users. And I think that is working, right? Across the board, users are much more wanting to not be tracked, overwhelmingly, right? And our expectation going into this was that about 30% of users in total are going to opt in. I think in steady state, that's approximately the number we're going to see anyway. I think, as Sergio mentioned, the current day numbers are closer to 25% or so, but also not every app has optimized the opt-in process, nor has every app even decided to put in an opt-in, right? And so there's some trade-offs that the ecosystem's making in terms of how to nudge a user in the right direction to get the opt-in. But irrespective, we don't expect more than 30% of the users to opt in. The other side of that equation, of course, is purely from an advertiser side lens. It is not only an opt-in into one app that matters, but also opt-in into the advertiser's app, right? That matters. So it's actually 2 apps where the user needs to opt in to be, truly identifiable across the ecosystem from a demand perspective. We don't expect that number to be super high. Maybe 15% would be considered a very, very healthy number, and I'm just making that up too, right? We don't really have evidence that the intersection of 2 different applications from a user opt-in is going to be very high, even single digit, right? So even single digit would be not surprising, basically. So that's the user part of it. Overall, I feel that the users have been really well educated. Apple's done really good go-to-market on this one on the user end. On the exchange and SDK side, I think very, very simple. Two metrics that matter. What percentage of supply is iOS 14.5 and above? It has crossed about 60% as of today. This is true across our top three exchanges. And so I have to believe that the ecosystem is well and truly ready for prime time on this one. The other metric, of course, is how many of the ad requests are even SKAD network compliant. That is well over 90% for the ecosystem. So again, it's very, very indicative that the exchanges and the SDK players have been very, very, very tight in terms of their execution, in terms of their specs, in terms of getting approved to be live with apps on the App Store. And so we just feel the ecosystem was incredibly tight on that execution, and very well done overall. On the DSP and network end as well, from all my conversations in the ecosystem, it seems like 100% of the DSPs have run at least a few thousand installs on SKAD network across at least 3 to 5 customers. This is true for all of the top 5 to top 10 DSPs in the ecosystem and ad networks. And so it is fair to say that all of them have the piping and the infrastructure to support iOS 14 and to support SKAD network. Now, it is also true, though, that with the campaign ID infrastructure and the conversion value infrastructure, the way some of these things are set up on the SKAD network side, that machine learning does need to evolve, right? The algorithms and the bidders that were delivering substantial value in the old world, they're going to need to evolve a little more. And so I think the entire DSP ecosystem is still working on that problem, because one really core feature of most DSPs was the targetability and the addressability of very specific users that were either high value or potentially high paying, or lookalikes and such. And so with some of those things out of the window, I think there's some adjustments still pending. Thankfully, the DSP ecosystem has been working at this problem about 3 to 6 months now, and I think we're getting to the finish line pretty soon across multiple companies. And so I do think the demand side, while the timeline was really tight for most of us, from my conversations with the top 10, it seems like everybody's about 80% there in terms of readiness. Naturally, as SKAD Network's introducing new changes with every version, suddenly the IP is gone, which means new tech, right? And so we continue to expect some minor disruptions of this kind ongoing, but generally speaking, I think the orientation and the implementation has been falling into place. The fourth part is where it's a little scary, right? Advertisers. Now, there's multiple maybe types of advertisers with differing levels of maturity. There's a certain type of advertiser, typically a gaming advertiser, who has figured out SKAD network, who has figured out conversion values, conversion modeling, and how to basically get the most out of SKAD network's rule kit, while not sacrificing the ability to do cohort analysis for a lifetime value and all the basic stuff that is that constitutes the user acquisition engine for those businesses, right? But I would say that's a minority. No more than 20% of the advertisers have figured this out. When we speak to a large majority of advertisers, the question, the answer to the question, okay, have you created a conversion value mechanism or a conversion modeling mechanism that is your own, that supports your business, that is custom built for your apps or your games? A lot of the times the answer is no, we're going with the default offered to us by the MMP. It says two things. One, the MMPs have done a pretty decent job of capturing the use cases. It's not bad. It's a pretty good 80-20 catch-all, and they've done a decent job. But number two, it also means that even some of the largest advertisers in the world haven't actually custom built some of the conversion values and the conversion modeling framework as they need to. And it's not scary thanks to the MMPs, but it could have been, if the MMPs weren't doing what they did. It's a really scary situation where, the LTV measurement, the lifetime value measurement mechanism is completely out the window. So I would say that is one answer that we have encountered very often, that advertisers are completely hands-off on conversion modeling and conversion values, and they're letting MMPs dictate how that LTV measurement is done. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do think that a couple of the MMPs have done a really good job of modeling the lifetime value, and I think it'll work out okay. The third part of it, which is also interesting and a tad scary, is the campaign ID framework, right? Advertisers were used to running multiple geos, multiple exchanges, multiple OS, multiple creatives right, and refresh them all the time. And that's just 4 out of 10 examples, right? Different supply, bundle IDs, basically different publishers, different ad slots like rewarded video versus banner. Each of those things was practically a different campaign for many advertisers in the past. Now, the campaign ID framework obviously limits the number of campaign IDs one can create, and so the number of experiments that an advertiser can run in parallel really is constrained. But when we asked advertisers, and we ran a survey recently of 30 advertisers to tell us what is their preferred way to use the campaign ID framework, most of them came back and said, we don't care, do what you need to do in terms of optimization. We're ultimately going to look at throughput and lifetime value through the conversion modeling framework. That is a bit scary. Like, advertisers will realize when push comes to shove, when things are live, when campaigns are 100% running on SKAd network, that just testing the next 10 creatives is no longer as easy as it used to be. And so it just, those basic mechanics of how do you run user acquisition have changed. And I think there will be a tough adjustment period for the next 6 months for everybody in the ecosystem, especially along those lines. I do think the one part of the equation that is really not figured out is the campaign ID side. And I say not figured out because there's no consistency, right? DSP A versus DSP B versus Ad Network A. All of them have a slightly different version of campaign ID usage, and they may all not be aligned to exactly what every advertiser needs. And it is also true that setting up campaign IDs customized to every single advertiser is going to be a huge tax on some of the ad tech systems. So anyway, a few uncertainties on that front. So, hopefully that covers users, exchanges, networks, and advertisers, which are basically the four key stakeholders.